Oh, you're very brave.
Well, I took my German Shepherd Fritz with me. I had not felt anything. And let me tell you, Marvin Scott, who's a terrific reporter, he's still working. He works for WPIX Channel 11. He has 12 or 13 Emmys. And Mike Linder, who was the reporter for WNEW radio during the so-called, what I called the psychic slumber party or the seance.
That's what it was like.
I was the one who gave it that name. I was sitting in between Marvin Scott and Mike Linder. And all of a sudden during the seance, Marvin and Mike, who were both avowed skeptics, and to this day they'll tell you they think it was BS. All of a sudden, Marvin leans over and says to me, "Hey, I just felt a chill." Like that, very urgent and very, very surprised. 5, 10 minutes later, Mike Linder on the other side of me leans over and says, "Hey, I just felt a chill." I didn't feel anything. Meanwhile, the other psychic, Mary, she became ill, ran out of the dining room, and got nauseous on the side lawn. Then there was another psychic who was there. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the seance, she was sitting right across from me, Alberta Riley. She was there with her husband. And she starts screaming, "It's upstairs in one of the second floor bedrooms and it's moving." But these are not things that you can prove. Now,
Right.
when I went in with my dog Fritz, when the house, finally at about 3:34 in the morning, Ed Warren called a halt to the proceedings because there were 21 people in the house and there was too much going on. And he said, the house, we're not going to get anything. But before that happened, when our cameraman, when we first got there at about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, our cameraman, Steve, went up the stairs heading to the second floor, and he got halfway up the stairway and he turned around. He had this strange look on his face. And he says to me, "There's a room, it's the second door on the left, that has one wall is filled with mirrors." And he said to me, "I don't know how I knew that." And that's the master bedroom. And right behind the bed, that was one of those mirrored, 12 by 12 mirrored squares.
Right.
Behind the bed, that had been left over from the DeFeos. But at that point, Steve, who was from New Jersey, he wouldn't have, those photographs after the murders were not widely circulated. He kept going up the stairs. Now, Steve, our cameraman, was probably about 40 years old, about 5'10". I would say it was a slim man, about maybe 150 pounds. Cameramen in those days, because the equipment was a lot bulkier, bigger, and
Yeah.
heavier, you had to be fit. And this man, and because you were running all over New York City, the tri-state area, Jersey, Connecticut, wherever, he kept walking up the stairs and he was just taking light meter readings. He did not have his camera in his hand. He's just going up the stairs. He gets to the second floor landing, which is where Lorraine Warren had also had a reaction the first time she went in.
Yeah, I remember that.
And felt ill. And he turns around, and I was standing at the bottom of the stairs looking up at him. And he turns around and he looks, and all of a sudden he doubles over, clutching his chest. I watched the color drain out of his face.
Yeah.
And at that point, we had 3-man crews. You had a sound man and a lighting man. Now, today, in most cases, you got the reporters doing everything.
Telephone.
Exactly. Our sound guy and our lighting guy run up the stairs to assist him. They bring him down, sit him on the bottom step, and he was ashen and he had broken out into a cold sweat.
Ooh, that's not good.
We got him some water and we said, "Steve, what happened?" Because he was not running. He was not carrying any equipment. And he said, I don't know. All of a sudden, I just felt this heaviness and I had real severe heart palpitations
Oh my.
and chest pain. And he was okay after about 15 minutes. And he proceeded and he went and he took pictures. And I remember going into the newsroom because it was Saturday night, March 6th. I remember it was my mom's birthday. And I saw him in the newsroom on Monday morning. I said, Steve, how are you doing? He said, I'm fine. He says, he never had anything before that or after that. So that was a mystery. Now, if you ask Marvin Scott, or Mike Linder has been interviewed since then. Mike Linder actually stayed overnight. He went upstairs in one of the bedrooms and slept in the bedroom to see if anything was going to happen. He wakes up the next morning at 8:00 and he's alone in the house. He goes back to WNEW to file the story, cut the piece, and his tagline at the time, I remember this well because when he filed it and it aired on Monday, this is radio, he said, coming to you from the not so haunted house in Amityville, this is Mike Linder from WNEW Radio. And years later, when he was interviewed, he said it was insane. He said because he was debunking the whole thing. And he said people didn't care. They were calling him up. And for 6 to 8 months afterwards, I'll never forget this, we aired the story, and Marvin Scott had a lot of trepidation around the fact, he says, I don't think we have it. In other words, what the public wanted to see was manifestations.
Mm-hmm. That moment when something,
like Poltergeist or The Exorcist,
right.
Table levitating, a lamp being thrown against the wall, somebody, being levitating,
somebody's head spinning around.
Exactly. Pea green, vomiting pea green, projectile vomit, something like that. And that's not what happened. So we cut the piece. It was 2-part series, and didn't matter. The phones lit up anyway. And I remember Mark Monsky, who was the news director at Channel 5, saying, okay, we have to find something else to do because we've done as much as we can do with this house. Nobody's going to be interested. And I was like, that's like the people who said radio is the future and it's not going to supplant television, and there's no such thing as space travel. He couldn't have been more wrong. But I can tell you for at least 6 or 8 months after that, we were still getting phone calls every day. And by we, I meant me, because it was being channeled to me. Steve and Bauman and Marvin Scott were, reporters who were out on the street quite a bit. And then it's, and people were asking me, could they go into the house? I mean, I'd have, teenagers calling me up saying, could we go and spend the night in the house? I mean, what you would expect. This was New York.
Yeah.
And people were coming down there by the busloads.
Yeah.
To do this, any type of phenomenon. And by the way, around the same time, in 1976, again in Queens, Bayside, Queens, you had this woman, Veronica Lukin, and she was a housewife in Bayside. And about in 1970, she started saying that she was seeing visions of the Virgin Mary, okay, on the lawn of St. Robert Bellarmine's Catholic Church. Just like, so it's similar to St. Bernadette of Lourdes, saying she saw a lady standing on a tree, or the Fatima apparitions.
Right.
And interestingly, the Catholic Church does not require people to believe in miracles, even when they have given their benediction.
Reporting. Yeah.
Yes. So Veronica Lukin in the mid-70s starts saying she's been seeing visions of the Virgin Mary. So she starts taking her show out of her house onto the front lawn of St. Robert Bellarmine's church in front of the statues there. And the next thing you know, people are flocking to her. And it was getting out of hand. I mean, people wanted to believe. So people are showing up, and the next thing you know, you have prayer vigils, you have hundreds, thousands of people. And a close friend of mine, who was in high school at the time, he becomes private enterprise and said, hey, I can monetize this. So he goes to the local supermarkets and he's buying up those little juice boxes of lemonade and stuff, juice, whatever. And he's selling them, buying them for a quarter a container. And he's selling them for $1.25, $1.50 to all of the faithful who are parched.
So he paid attention in history class. The people that got rich at the California Gold Rush were the people who sold the shovels and the hats, not the miners.
So, but what happened, she was doing this, okay, in June, on June 18th, she did this for 25 years. First, so what happened was the Catholic Church said, look, you can't do this because just like Amityville, you had tour buses showing up. So people, want to believe. So then what she did when St. Robert Bellarmine's got, I guess, a restraining order.
Oh my God.
And said, you can't do this because you're blocking the street. She would gather her followers and she would have these all-night vigils right in front of the Unisphere in Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, which had been the site of the World's Fair, 1964-65.
What's the Unisphere?
That was the big globe of the Earth. I'm sure you've seen the Unisphere at the World's Fair.
Oh, I've probably seen it, but I didn't know it had a name.
Yeah. I have I would, my friends and I would, I remember being a kid and after the World's Fair was over, I biked, 3 or 5, because I lived 3 or 4 miles from there, and we'd bike over and we'd ride around because some of the buildings were still up. The Unisphere is still there. So she was doing this. She died in 1995, but she basically said that she would go into a trance and she was basically getting messages from the Virgin Mary, who she said, Our Lady of the Roses. That's what she called her. And what happened was the Catholic Church didn't want her, seeing this on the front lawn of the church. So, and her husband, after Veronica died in 1995, her husband basically kept promoting what she was supposedly seeing. But my point is, whether or not it's Amityville, and you're talking about haunted houses or possession, or religious apparition, even in Bayside, Queens, people are the believers as well as the non-believers or deniers, the naysayers, are going to flock to this. And we witness this, and it grows exponentially.
Well, do you remember Elvis and the Screen Door?
Oh yeah. I remember one woman. There was. This is kind of funny because with all the alien abduction stories you have out there, there was one woman. I guess she was in the National Enquirer or News of the World, one of those tabloids. And it was a funny quote. I was in stitches reading this as, a reporter. And she was trying to convince the interviewer, look, I'm not a nut job. I really was abducted by aliens. And she goes on to say, as part of the quote, this is what cracked me up. Look, this is not like people who see Elvis at Kmart.
Well, My favorite weekly world news, because I had a lot of children, and the only time I ever had any peace and quiet was standing in the grocery line when I'd go grocery shopping. Just, I could space out, right? And they had the regs, National
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Enquirer.
So you
Yeah,
stand there and you read them. Yes,
I
yes.
would read them. And my very favorite one, I'll never forget it, was the possessed Cabbage Patch doll. And my feeling was I thought they were all possessed. What did I know? So anyway, listen, I have to tell you how much I appreciate it. You must be exhausted. This is quite a story. And you say you're going to
And
write
by
a
the way, it just, I've got 51 years of this under my belt.
never gets
So,
old, does it?
no, and I'll tell you, there were also, we just scratched the surface. There were
I know.
also, copycat murders. There was this kid who was on drugs, who he was into Satanism out there. It was a couple of years. And after that, and Ricky Casso, and he was very fascinated he was known as the Acid King. He murdered his 17-year-old friend out in Northport, but he was fascinated by Amityville. And he showed up at my office one day. He went to the Amityville house, and he showed up at my office one day asking me about Amityville and the murders. They actually did a documentary and a movie on this, because under the influence of drugs, he killed his 17-year-old friend. And there were two other teenagers who were present at the murder. And it was out in the Aztakia Woods out in Northport. And they were all on drugs. Probably it was LSD. And they tortured the one guy that they killed. And there was an occult aspect to it. And, people were worried about kids getting into satanic cults.
Oh, I remember that.
Okay,
Yeah,
heavy metal music, they were worried about, AC/DC,
Oh, you just
Black
read my
Sabbath.
mind.
Well, yeah, but he actually, and he committed suicide in jail, Ricky Casso. And he was doing all sorts of weird stuff before he murdered his friend Gary Lowers.
Well, we can't talk about it too much on YouTube, because I have spent over a year on YouTube probation for using terminology, just non-shocking words. They've become censorious to a point you can't even believe.
What I can tell you is, with the connection without even talking about what happened with the murder, he showed up at my office one day wanting to talk to me. He had tracked me down about Amityville. So there was a copycat thing, going on.
It sort of triggered that in kids, huh?
Yeah.
That's just bizarre.
And that was, you figure, like 8 years later after all of this. So it still resonates. And if you go out there and you try and film in front of the house, you have to get permit, you have to let the Amityville police know that you're doing it. And the last I heard, I'm not sure if this is still going on, but for people legitimate news organizations or documentarians that want to film, the cops say, okay, let us know. And then, don't get close to the house, because there's a couple living there and they have a couple of kids, and they work in the area. They don't want to be bothered. They're very, low key. They're nice people. But I know that at one point, the Amityville police were or somebody was charging $1,000 fee. I don't know if they still are. If you're
a fee or a fine?
A fee.
For permission.
And there was one reporter at one point, going back years ago, a couple of decades ago, who went onto the property and wanted to interview the then owners of the house, who called the police, and the reporter got arrested and was taken down to the Amityville police station. She was Eventually they let her go and didn't charge her, and but the guy said, hey, this is unlawful trespass, and you can understand why the people would get annoyed. On the other hand, if you're going to buy that house, like the couple that bought the house right after the Lutzes lived there, they had to know that they were in for a lot of
A three-ring circus. Yes.
Exactly. And they ended up
Yes.
suing the Lutzes, who sued them because they said, oh, it's nothing, you made this story up. And well, why would you move into that house if that's what you had to know? The house is infamous with the movie and the book, etc. You're going to be bothered. And I can understand there's a fence outside of the house now. And essentially, though, for a long time, people were running up to the house, especially like on Halloween and things like this, urinating on the bushes, trying to touch the house, stupid things that were very, but who
People
wants
are
that?
so ridiculous.
Yeah, so it's, but there's a lore. Now they have, of course, changed the number on the house. And if you go on to realtor.com or Zillow or Google Earth, it's blacked out, but that doesn't fool anybody because you can change the house number, but everybody knows which house it is. It's been so widely
photographed. Yeah. I mean, it's just out there. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But even now, when we were filming the Amityville horror documentary, and we were trying to get in and out of there in a hurry, and I was standing there with Danny, you'd see people peeping out of their blinds, see what we're doing. And then cars would go down the block and they would beep their horns to disrupt the shot or to make background noise. Well, that's kind of stupid because it's juvenile and you're only going to prolong the amount of time
you guys are there
that you have to be there. But behind the scenes, what people say is and what they say publicly are two very different things. So there have been people, including a couple of realtors, that went on the record with interviews saying that when they went into the house, and this is years after the Lutzes were there, that they felt really very creepy. They felt they wanted to get out of there. They had a bad feeling. But there's so much myth that's grown up around it. Again, I think the people who say it's all a hoax, there's a lot of evidence to show, yes, this was exaggerated. This was hyperbole. This didn't happen. And now, 50 years later, you also have second and third generation Amityville aficionados who are conflating different events and coming up with, wrong things.
Right. Well, you're working on a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what, where you are in the process, but if I'm still alive when you finish your book, and I'm not implying
I'm about 80% done. It's not that I don't have everything. Yes, it's not that I don't have everything, but it's just, I'm busy with other work. And
well, I'm not implying that you're a slow worker. I'm implying that I'm getting old here very rapidly. But if you're finished the book, and you still remember us over here in our little obscure corner of YouTube, would you be willing to? I will read the book. I cover a book every weekend. Every Saturday, I synopsize a book, and sometimes it takes a few weeks to get through a whole book because I really synopsize them and try to have the author or somebody familiar with the topic come and talk. And I would be happy to do your book if you
Sure.
get it out there.
Absolutely. When I get it done. So how many? So you have what? 15,000 followers? About 13,000, 15,000?
13. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
I would say this. I'm not trying to dissuade you. I would never do that. I would be delighted to have you do the book. But the books that I cover are rarely the big thing. I'll tell you, I've done topics that I think are so important, philosophical things, things about, oh, I don't know, morality and ethical situations. I've covered people who've had remarkable lives and done remarkable things. And then these books that I cover, I try to pick out something edifying at least. And I'll get, I don't know, I think 20 people watch the last episode of the book that I'm doing right now, which is The Indigenous People's History of the United States. It's an unbelievable book. And I did it in honor of Thanksgiving. And it's disheartening because people don't want to be bummed out, you know. But I'll tell you what a real popular video was that I made recently. Reading tarot cards on Harry and Meghan.
Really?
What
And
does that tell you about the state of our minds?
Basically that people are interested in junk food for the mind rather than the heavy stuff. And
yeah,
what did the reading say, by the way, on Harry and Meghan?
Well, I have to preface it by telling you that I don't know very much about them because I'm Irish. I was born in Ireland. I have a total disrespect for the concept of any monarchy, but specifically theirs. I believe they're social parasites. I have zero interest in them. I would not give them the honor or the waste my time paying attention. Having said that, the cards, I'm trying to remember now, the marriage itself is a pragmatic relationship. She is very much narcissistic. He's very much indulged and spoiled. He feels entitled, as does she, but in a different way. I think he's very, very unhappy. I think she manufactured the whole entire relationship. Now, keep in mind, I don't know anything about them. I've had people get in touch with me since I did the reading and said that that's exactly the,
well,
I guess.
You actually didn't need tarot cards, though, to show that. I think she's
correct, but that part. But
yeah, she's driving. She's the leader in that relationship. Clearly,
that's what I got. That she was the strong individual, and he sort of was the passive member of the couple. I can't remember. Well, you can watch you can watch my videos. I can't remember what else I said because I read them together and then I read each of them separately.
Oh, okay.
And it was really interesting because it was a mutually sort of parasitic relationship.
Yeah, almost like transactional. But I think
completely
he was certainly besotted by her to the when they got together.
I don't know.
Because before the wedding, there were lots of stories that circulated in the tabloids and online where she was being very demanding of the palace courtiers, saying, I want this, I want that. And if she didn't get it, she was stomping her foot. And Harry went and he was yelling at these people who worked for them in the palace and said, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. And Queen Elizabeth II came in and she told her grandson, look, we don't treat people that way. And Meghan does not get everything she wants. So there, as you say, there are so many stories. So how do you see it coming out? Do you see them staying together?
No, I think he's going to reach the end of his rope.
Well, I do think he has after the way the mother was Princess Diana was killed. He's certainly been very damaged by that, but it's like, go and get help.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't know. It's very interesting to me because the brother, Harry's a Virgo, like me. His birthday is the day after mine.
When is that? I don't know astrology.
Oh, September, mid-September. So, but I'm just surprised that he acts so wimpy. And as you say, passive.
He's very passive. She's the dominant one. She's controlling and narcissistic.
Well, the latest thing that happened with her is that her father, from whom she is estranged, and
Oh.
he lives in the Philippines now. Well, supposedly before the wedding, he was giving interviews to the paparazzi and things like this, and he didn't go to the wedding, so she stopped talking to him, and the press keeps on him, and he keeps making pleas for her to talk to him.
How come he didn't go to their wedding?
He had had a heart attack ahead of time. He had had a heart attack before that, and they thought it was made up. And
Wait. The couple thought he made it up?
well, I think that they thought it was exaggerated, but now what's happened is he's not in good health. He's 80 years old, and he was living in California. Then he had a place in Mexico, and then finally he and his older son from his prior marriage, who's Megan's half brother, they moved to the Philippines. So the latest headlines that came out about him just this week, it's all over the news, is that he had to have emergency surgery. He was in the ICU, and he had his leg was gangrenous.
Oh, God.
It was a blood clot, and they had to amputate his leg below the knees. And then in response, Megan basically said, her people said, oh, well, she reached out to her father. She hadn't been in touch with him. And then, of course, the father came out and said, no, we haven't heard from them. I haven't heard from her. Please get in touch with me. So it's a bad look for her because she keeps trying to make her face, she's 43, 44 years old, and she keeps trying to make her brand. She's trying to do this brand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think, and they had this big Netflix deal going, and they haven't pulled the plug on them yet, but clearly their public persona has taken a hit. I think a lot of people, whether or not you loathe, and being half Irish myself, I'm not a big fan of British monarchy, but when you saw that interview that the two of them did with Oprah,
I didn't see
where
it.
nothing was challenged. Well, basically they got on and they did this right when Prince Philip, the Queen's husband, he was very, very ill, and he ended up dying a couple of weeks later. And they basically, for a big fee, went out and told their story and basically whined on camera saying, oh, we were treated so badly, and Meghan was the victim of racism. And by the way, it is true that the British tabloids were very, very racist in their remarks about her. But she was also welcomed by the British people.
I have to confess something to you. This is the truth, and it's pretty embarrassing on me, but I also think it's really kind of funny. About a year or two ago, my husband and I were talking one day, and he said something about, well, I see they're in the news again. And I said, oh, I don't want to hear about it. And he says, yeah, but the British news is really mean to her. And I said, I don't care. And he says, yeah, but I think it's really racist. And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, well, it's racist. And I said, what, they don't like Americans? And he said, no, she's biracial. I didn't know. That's how little attention I paid. I have no idea.
They were racist, and they had headlines at the time when she first came onto the scene, straight out of Compton, things like that. But she didn't do herself any favors by her diva-like behavior. And then when they fled the monarchy and came to America and said they weren't going to be working royals, and they were trying to say, well, can we do this part-time? And the Queen, who was still alive at the time, said, no, you're either all in or you're all out. And they made all these allegations. And in the Oprah interview, Meghan alleged, and so did Harry, that two unnamed people in the British royal family were questioning how dark their baby would be.
Who do you
And
think that was?
well, that was the thing. So then it became a guessing game about who it was. And all Harry said at the time was it was not the Queen. So finally, it came out a couple of years later. And this was very unfair. And by the way, Oprah didn't challenge any of this. People were taking this as verbatim.
Yeah.
And
No.
Harry did that book, The Spare. And, you know, he said he sort of got into a shoving match with his brother, and he was throwing all of his relatives. It's one thing to air the family laundry in public, but it's another thing to do it for millions of dollars. And that's why they signed a deal with Netflix that wanted to get, you know, salacious stuff. So after that original thing, they keep trying to promote with varying degrees of, you know, less success. Meghan's lifestyle thing. Now she's doing jams, you know, she's making jams and things like this. And of course, Prince Charles has his farms up there and on his estates where he's made jams for years. So it's a lot of copycat stuff, and she's getting raked over the coal. But there was a famous, you should look it up, South Park.
Oh, I was just going to ask you if you've seen it. Oh, I watched it beginning to end.
And it was
the privacy
hysterically
tour,
funny.
right?
Yeah, the private. We want privacy, so they're really getting raked over the coals.
Yeah.
And I think it's becoming, you know, she has a few friends, like Serena Williams, the tennis player, the retired tennis player, Oprah's friend Gayle King, who's on CBS. But other than that, you know, I don't, and they were making things up. There was at one point where they were in New York for a United Nations event where they were getting some award, and they claimed that they were swarmed by the paparazzis, were swarming the taxi that they were in. And that it delayed them, you know, they had to zoom away from this. Now, anybody who knows New York City traffic knows that you can't just zoom away where there's a lot of traffic.
Right.
The reporters did get to the taxi cab driver who said, no, it wasn't anything like that. This is made up. So they're trying to, you know, this victim
equate themselves with Princess Diana, right? And the paparazzi situation. Well, yeah. You'll be amused to know that when I put that video about them up, I called it another Meghan and Harry privacy tour.
Well, but anyway, what's amazed me is that Prince William has become so much stronger. You know?
No, I don't know what he's doing.
Well, he's much more grounded than Harry is. Harry still seems to me like a wounded bird. Like he can't, like he's a fish out of water, you know, and that he should get whatever help that he needs. But it's a bad look when you have to sell your family, throw them under the bus for money.
Well, yes, it's unseemly and it's very sad.
And it's a law of diminishing returns. How many more family secrets can he air? I mean, people are basically saying, "Oh, stop whining already."
It is the English royal family. They have centuries of secrets.
No, I get it, but I mean, like look at the latest with the former prince, now Andrew Mountbatten.
Oh my God!
And Sarah Ferguson, etc. You see things. So the monarchy has really taken a lot of hits, much more, you know, a lot more so than when Princess Diana and Charles divorced, Princess Anne.
But, you know, it's not really anything new. If you go back 300, 400, 500 years, I mean, the gossip about Queen Elizabeth I and what she was and what she wasn't and what she was doing secretly. And, you know, there's always that sort of, when you isolate yourself with that much money and hold yourself that much above everybody else, and you have so much power over life and death, people are going to talk. You know, there's going
You
to be
don't, well,
stories.
today, of course, the modern monarchy is virtually symbolic, and they don't have life and death power over people. That's, why you have the prime
Well,
minister.
did you know? Here's an interesting tidbit. Now, I don't have my exact proper titles for things in my memory right now, but there's a convention. It's a law that when British Parliament makes a decision and it's going to be binding on the people, they cannot do it until the Queen comes and meets with the Prime Minister and she signs off on it. Or it would be, I
Yes,
guess,
or
the
now
King.
now
The
it's
King
now it's the
now.
king. Now it's the king, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of speculation about King Charles' cancer diagnosis. He's still being treated. Nobody knows exactly what for. Harry, of course, came out and said, well, I'm not sure how much longer my father has to live. What a thing to say. So that, of course, immediately raises issues.
He said that to the cameras?
Yeah, when he was first diagnosed. It's amazing, but there's been radio silence from Buckingham Palace, and back to the point about who the person was, who the person or persons were that raised the specter of, oh, how dark is this baby going to be?
Oh, that's
Before the
unbelievable.
baby, I didn't believe that one. And finally, it leaked out that the supposed culprit was Princess Catherine.
Oh, married to William, right?
Yes, married to William, or they call her Kate. They still call her Kate Middleton, even though she's been married to him since 2011. And I think if Harry ever thinks he's going to have any type of rapprochement with his family after that. And then, of course, she was diagnosed with cancer and was treated. And this was at the same time that Prince Charles was diagnosed.
What do you suppose? Do you speculate what she had? Like, what was wrong with her? I know it was cancer, but I mean, like,
it seemed nobody really knows. It seems like it could have been like some sort of abdominal cancer, or possibly, female type cancer. But she supposedly got the all clear now.
I'm just nosy,
Well, they've kept it under wraps.
Which is weird. Does that strike you as odd? Why would you keep something like that a secret? If you're going to tell everybody that you have cancer, you have to expect people are going to want to know details. I mean, it's just weird to me.
She's probably I think not so much shy, but I think she had major abdominal surgery, and then she had the preventive chemotherapy, and so if it was abdominal surgery that she had, and that they found malignant cells there, you would think it could be, anything from stomach, liver, what's in your abdomen.
Yeah.
To, female
uterine, ovarian.
Cancer.
Yeah. But we all know she's a girl. It's not a secret. We all know the parts people have. I'm more forthright about things. I don't understand that kind of unnecessary secrecy. Either you don't want to talk about it, and I respect that. But if you're going to talk about it, why be coy?
I can't hear you.
Oh, you're can't muted. Hear me?
You're muted.
No. Let me see.
I can't hear you.
Hello. Okay. No, I'm not muted.
I don't know. I can't hear you.
Nothing's different here.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I guess so. Sorry about that. I don't know why. I don't know why it's.
I can hear you fine, and I checked my settings are okay.
I don't know. I mean, my mic is not muted.
Mine neither.
Maybe it's spirits. Yeah, spirits.
Let me say goodbye to everybody. Don't go away. Okay. Thank you, everybody. This is an abrupt ending. I appreciate everybody
Well, thank
watching.
you. Yeah, let's do this again. Very interesting.
I'll talk to everybody later.
Take
Thank
care.
you for watching Slongafoil.